There was silence, the kind of silence that feels alive, heavy, breathing in the dark corners of the universe. Steve Harvey stood still, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something beyond what eyes could see. The air around him trembled with a weight that no man could carry. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was the realization of truth. A truth too great, too final. They had spoken of this day for centuries. Some laughed it off, others whispered it in trembling voices. But now the time for laughter was gone. The sun had drawn closer, its heat unbearable, and the sky above was no longer blue. It was torn apart, bleeding red, folding into itself like a wounded soul. Steve could hear people crying in the distance, their voices echoing across an endless plain. Mothers calling for their children, the powerful begging for mercy, kings and beggars standing shoulder to shoulder, stripped of everything they once owned. The world that once seemed infinite now felt small, smaller than a single heartbeat. He remembered the verses he'd once heard. When the sun is folded up, when the stars fall scattering, when the seas are set aflame, he used to hear those words as metaphors, but now he was watching them unfold. The ocean had risen like a roaring beast, swallowing cities whole, then receding as if ashamed of its rage. The stars that once lit the night had collapsed, leaving a black sky weeping dust. And then the sound came, a horn, not like any trumpet of this world. It didn't pierce the air, it shattered it. Mountains trembled like frightened animals. The ground cracked beneath their feet. And in that moment, Steve fell to his knees, his heart pounding not from terror, but from awe. He had spent his life talking, laughing, inspiring, but now words failed him. Every tongue was silent. Every soul was exposed. He saw them, people rising from the dust, from graves long forgotten, from oceans, from ashes scattered in the wind. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. Time had ended, yet everything had just begun. The dead looked at the living, and the living wished they were dead. There was no sound of birds, no whisper of wind, only footsteps, billions of footsteps, moving towards something unseen. And above them, the earth stretched open like a wound, revealing the truth that had always been there, hidden beneath layers of arrogance and denial. Steve's voice trembled in his chest. This is it, he whispered. The day they spoke about, he saw angels, vast, radiant, terrifying. Their wings spanned the horizon, their light blinding, their presence crushing. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Each movement carried divine judgment. And between them, the scrolls began to open, pages filled with everything mankind had done, every act of kindness, every betrayal, every prayer whispered in the dark. People stared at their records, their hands shaking. Some wept, others screamed. But there were those, the humble ones, whose faces glowed with peace. Their hearts were calm, their eyes lifted high, because they had lived not for this world, but for the one beyond it. Steve could see it, the scale balanced in light and shadow. Deeds weighed, tears counted. Even a smile given in sincerity held its weight. He thought of his own life, of laughter that came easy, of pride that clouded his heart, of moments he could never take back. He felt small, smaller than dust, before the majesty of it all. And then came the darkness. It wasn't the kind that blinds, but the kind that reveals. Every secret sin, every hidden thought rose to the surface like smoke. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. People tried to turn away, but their own souls bore witness against them. The heart said, I knew what you did. He saw faces he once knew. Celebrities, politicians, ordinary people, all stripped of fame, titles, wealth. Their names meant nothing here. The only value left was faith, and for many that had already slipped through their fingers. And then light. From the horizon came a brilliance unlike any sun. It wasn't heat, it wasn't fire. It was truth. And from that light emerged the throne. Not something made of gold or stone, but of power itself. A presence so vast that even the sky seemed to bow. Every soul dropped in submission. Steve felt tears burn his eyes. He didn't understand everything, but he felt it. The justice, the mercy, the unimaginable reality of God. Voices rose, trembling, to whom belongs the kingdom today? And the answer came, a voice so powerful that the universe itself seemed to bend under its shaft, to Allah, the one, the irresistible. He thought of his life, of all the days he thought would never end. The laughter, the lights, the fame, how small it all seemed now. How fragile. The earth was silent once more. The records were closed. And one by one, every soul was called forward. Some walked with light surrounding them, gentle, pure, endless. Others were dragged in shadows, crying for a second chance that would never come. And in that moment, Steve understood this was not a story of punishment or wrath. It was a story of truth, of justice that had waited since the beginning of time. Every moment on earth had led to this. Every choice had built this reality. The wind moved again, soft, almost sorrowful. And in that breath of eternity, Steve whispered, "Now I see this is not the end. This is the beginning." The wind that carried Steve's whisper seemed to linger, as if the air itself wanted to remember his words. This is not the end. This is the beginning. But even that faint echo was swallowed by the immensity of what stood before him. The horizon had vanished. There was no sky, no ground, no direction, only the throne, and the countless souls suspended in a place beyond time. The light that radiated from that presence was not blinding, yet it stripped every illusion bare. No shadow could hide, no heart could lie. Steve felt himself standing, though there was no earth beneath his feet. The crowd around him stretched endlessly, a sea of humanity gathered since the dawn of existence. Their faces were different, yet all wore the same expression, a trembling awareness that everything they had ever done, every word, every secret intention had come alive before them. The angels moved like waves of lightning, silent, perfect, unstoppable. Each one carried something. Some bore scrolls sealed with divine wax, others held chains glowing like molten fire. There were those whose wings cast shade upon the sinners, and others whose light illuminated the righteous like the dawn after 1,000 nights of darkness. Steve tried to speak, but his voice didn't belong to him anymore. He was a soul among souls, a witness to an event beyond creation. And then it began. A command echoed, not through the air, but through existence itself. Every being heard it, not with ears, but with the essence of who they were. Bring forth the records. The books began to open. Pages fluttered in the void, written in ink of light and shadow. They didn't need hands to turn them. They turned themselves, revealing stories of entire lifetimes. He saw it all unfolding. A man whose name he did not know stepped forward. His record was read aloud, a voice not cruel but unyielding. Every deed appeared before him like visions. The good he had done shone like sparks of dawn. But the wrongs he'd hidden, they crawled out like shadows, clinging to him. "Did you not think this day would come?" the voice asked. The man tried to speak to justify, but his own body spoke against him. His eyes testified, showing the places he had looked where he shouldn't. His hands trembled as they spoke of what they had touched. His tongue quivered, remembering every word that had wounded, every lie that had built his pride. Steve felt the weight of it. He had heard stories, read scripture, seen preachers speak of judgment. But this wasn't words anymore. It was reality, more solid than the world had ever been. The man fell to his knees, and then the light vanished around him. The angels took him, no struggle, no sound, only despair. He disappeared into the darkness that awaited beyond the edge of the gathering. Steve wanted to look away, but his gaze was fixed. He could not blink, could not breathe. Every moment was recorded in his mind, and every whisper of the divine shook the deepest part of his soul. Then another figure stepped forward, a woman this time. She looked fragile, her clothes torn, her eyes red from tears that seemed endless. When her record opened, Steve expected the same weight, the same terror. But what came instead was mercy. Her deeds were few, but her heart, it shone with something different. Her pain, her patience, her silent prayers in the dead of night when no one listened, all were written in gold. The angels bowed as her record was closed. And when the light enveloped her, she smiled, not out of pride, but relief. For her, eternity had just begun in peace. Steve's own thoughts turned inward. His life flashed before him, not in chaos, but in clarity. Every laughter, every applause, every moment of pride. He remembered the fame, the shows, the audience chanting his name. But then the nights of guilt, the quiet prayers he had whispered, unsure if anyone was listening, the times he had spoken truth, and the times he had stayed silent out of fear. He wondered, what would his record say? Would the laughter he brought to people weigh against his moments of arrogance? Would the kindness he gave in secret matter more than the mistakes he made in public? He didn't have an answer, but he knew. Soon he would be called. The throne pulsed with light. The voice spoke again, resonant and final. Bring the nations. The crowd parted from every direction. Civilizations long forgotten, empires that had ruled and fallen, Pharaohs, kings, prophets, poets, leaders who once thought themselves immortal now walked barefoot in the same dust as their followers. Every symbol of power was gone. No crowns, no armies, no wealth. Only truth. He saw men who had conquered lands cry for forgiveness. He saw the oppressed rise with dignity, their patience rewarded. The scales tipped slowly, perfectly, without error. Not a single injustice escaped correction. A river appeared not of water, but of light. It flowed through the plain, dividing the gathering. On one side stood those who had believed, whose deeds brought peace to others. On the other stood those who had mocked, deceived, and destroyed. The river shimmered with brilliance, yet its current was terrifying. For those who crossed it in righteousness, it was cool and gentle. For the rest, it was fire. Steve could feel its heat from where he stood. His heart trembled. Then came the question, the one that silenced all things. What did you worship? It wasn't asked to one, but to all. Every soul felt it. And every false god, wealth, fame, ego, lust, revealed itself, taking form in front of its worshippers. Steve saw it. People chasing illusions they had once called dreams, now watching those illusions dissolve into smoke. The idols of power and beauty turned to ash, leaving only regret behind. Tears ran down faces like rivers. And yet amidst the chaos there was light. The believers, those who held faith through darkness, who spoke truth when it cost them everything, they began to move. Angels guided them, their faces radiant, their steps certain. Steve's heart beat faster. He wanted to follow them, but he knew he hadn't been called yet. The weight of time pressed down on him. And then his name echoed, not spoken aloud, but through his very being. It wasn't harsh, it wasn't kind. It was simply inevitable. He stepped forward, every soul around him faded. There was no audience now, only him and the presence. The book appeared before him, glowing faintly. His hands trembled as it opened. The pages turned, revealing his life. Every show, every laugh, every tear, every act of kindness. He watched himself. On stages, smiling, speaking words that inspired millions. Then moments off camera, alone, broken, praying when no one saw. He saw the nights he gave charity without telling a soul. He saw the times he turned away from arrogance. But he also saw the pride, the anger, the moments he forgot who he was meant to be. The silence was unbearable. Then came the voice, not angry, not cold, but heavy with truth. You heard. Yet you hesitated. Steve's breath caught. He fell to his knees. I tried, he whispered, though words barely formed. And then mercy. The book glowed brighter. His tears fell onto the ground that wasn't there, and where they touched, light spread. The voice spoke again, softer now. My mercy is greater than your sins. Say, warmth flooded through him. The fear that had crushed his soul lifted like mist in sunlight. He looked up and saw the angels smiling. From beyond, a path opened, radiant, endless. He stepped toward it, his body light as breath. The sound of rivers of laughter, of peace filled the air. The scent of paradise drifted. Not flowers, but something purer, something that felt like home. He turned one last time. Behind him, judgment continued. Faces of despair, faces of hope. He realized this wasn't a story of doom. It was a story of justice and love woven perfectly together. But then something shifted. The sky darkened once more. Not all had been judged. There were still those who refused to bow, whose arrogance remained even in the face of eternity. The ground beneath them began to open, revealing a depth no mind could comprehend. Flames rose not like earthly fire, but alive, consuming not flesh, but pride itself. The screams were unlike any sound. They weren't pain alone, they were realization. The realization of truth denied too long. Steve stopped walking. His heart ached. For every soul that fell, the air grew heavier. The angels' faces dimmed in sorrow. And then came the greatest sign, the bridge. It appeared across the abyss, thinner than a hair, sharper than a sword. Every soul had to cross it. Below it roared the fire. Above it waited the light. The righteous stepped onto it with hearts steady in faith. Their steps glowed, their pace unbroken. But for those who had lived in deception, the bridge cut into them, each step revealing what they had buried within. Many fell. Their cries faded into the flames. Steve approached it, trembling. He took a breath. The angels whispered, "Say his name." And he did. The word carried him. The bridge held. When he reached the other side, the world changed. It was unlike anything he had imagined. The air sang. The light embraced. Trees rose with leaves of silver and fruit that shimmered like stars. Rivers flowed beneath the ground, their sound like laughter, There were no shadows, no pain, no memory of fear. He walked through gardens that stretched forever. Every breath he took filled him with peace. The souls there greeted him, faces glowing, voices kind. They spoke no words, but he understood them. This was home. And yet, even in peace, he looked back once more. Beyond the gate, beyond the bridge, beyond the veil of judgment, the world still trembled, because for every soul that entered paradise, another faced the consequence of their choices. He thought of humanity, the billions of hearts that had lived, loved, sinned, repented, and he realized something that shook him even in joy. Every single choice had mattered. Every act, no matter how small, had echoed across eternity. Then a presence approached, brighter than all light, yet soft as mercy itself. Steve fell to his knees again, not in fear this time, but gratitude. The voice spoke, not aloud, but within him. This is what was promised. The world you left behind was never meant to last. You have seen justice, and you have seen mercy. Now rest, for eternity has begun. Say, and as he bowed, the gardens shimmered brighter, the river sang louder, and the sky, the true sky, opened in endless radiance. He closed his eyes. There was no time anymore. No beginning, no end. Only peace that stretched beyond thought, beyond soul. But somewhere in the unseen distance, beyond the veil of paradise, the final call still echoed across creation, a warning for those who still lived, a whisper carried through every breath of wind. Prepare for the day that will come, when truth will rise and shadows will fall, and thus the silence return, not empty but sacred, the silence of eternity fulfilled.